for hosting us today with a particularly relevant backdrop. I'm delighted to be joined here with caucus colleagues and, of course, our amazing Premier who's leading the charge. AmCan can, for a lot of good reasons, and I want to highlight some of the things in my ministry here that speak to that. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, the central feature behind the 4 mines that we opened in the first 4 years as government, the major legacy infrastructure projects that we are involved in right now and embarking on very soon, all have to do with First Nations economic reconciliation. They are an integral part of the opportunity. They are leading our environmental assessments, particularly with respect to the Ring of Fire. But across Northern Ontario, we see the opportunity, and so does the United States. In addition to the compelling story that the Premier has been telling our country and our friends to the south, Ontario is uniquely poised to meet the opportunity of AmCan, particularly when it comes to mineral production. The competition is stiff, with China processing 95% of rare earth elements and 65% of critical minerals. They get it from other parts of the world, and their practices are suspect. Here in Ontario, we boast the best labor standards. We think it's important that First Nations are involved and engaged and leading our environmental assessments, and an integral part of the legacy infrastructure that doesn't just serve to make their communities stronger, but puts our collective interests in developing our critical minerals the right way. Ontario itself, as a producer of more than 77% of the platinum group elements in Canada, and almost half of its nickel and 1/3 of its copper, we know how to do this. And so it's so exciting from where I'm standing as a northwestern Ontario guy, whether it's Separation Rapids, the lithium mine interests north of Pikangikum First Nation, where we've just announced in cooperation with the federal government to build a bridge across the Barrens River and access that part of an otherwise isolated part of northern Ontario. Whether it's Thunder Bay, the new epicenter, if you will, for a bunch of critical mineral mining activities, processing capacity, and then, of course, farther north into the Ring of Fire with one of the most exquisite quantitatively and qualitative supplies of critical minerals. We'll do it as partners, and we'll do it with the tremendous leader who has been, quite recently, telling the world, importantly, that Canada, but particularly Ontario, AmCan, can do this. And we can offer up the world one of its friendliest environmental policies the world over with the critical minerals that we have, so that from earth to electric vehicles and mines to motors, Ontario has got it all. And our partners are First Nations, and our partners are private companies and other levels of government. But at the end of the day, it's the leadership of this Premier and our amazing caucus who will move forward on these initiatives. I think it's compelling, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. So thank you very much. And I'm going to call on my friend and colleague, George Pirie, from the other side of Northern Ontario, to say a few words. Thanks, George.
Well, thank you very much, Greg, for those kind words. Yes, I'm George Pirie, Ontario's Minister of Mines. During these transformative times, it's important to remember that Canada is the United States' most reliable trading partner. Throughout our history, we've worked together to build one of the most integrated and mutually beneficial economic relationships in the world. Both of our countries' economies are deeply entwined, and we need to strengthen these ties now more than ever. As we set our sights on building the economy of the future, we know that critical minerals are going to be essential, and Ontario has them in abundance. Our province is home to deposits of cesium, lithium, titanium, germanium, gallium, and more. Not only does Ontario possess vast mineral deposits, but we also have a highly skilled mining workforce, a robust manufacturing sector, and an attractive and highly competitive business environment. Critical minerals are powering the technologies that will define the 21st century. Essentially, these essential items we depend on, like batteries, electric vehicles, clean energy systems, medical equipment, advanced defense technologies, and more that we have not yet realized. All of these things rely on critical minerals. Minerals mined in Ontario are already part of a vast cross-border supply chain and used in American and Canadian-made products. For example, most of the nickel that feeds the American aerospace and defense industries comes from Ontario. Talc, mined in Timmins, is exported to the United States to make catalytic converters and other automotive parts. Ontario's critical mineral strategy, we've attracted over $45 billion in investments in electric vehicles and battery manufacturing since 2020. This is our part of government's ambitious plan to ensure that electric vehicles of the future are built and powered using our integrated supply chain, talent, technology, and materials. I want to finish by saying that Ontario is ready. Ready to mine, ready to manufacture, ready to trade, and ready to power the economies of the future. In partnership with our American allies, we can ensure that Ontario's resources drive prosperity and security for the U.S. and Canada for generations to come. Ontario's Minister of Mines, I'm excited and optimistic about the Premier's AmCan growth plan, and I am thankful for his leadership. And now over to our Premier, who quite frankly is leading the charge for all of Canada.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Boy, I love the backdrop. I got to ask the people from ROM, my good friend Kim Tate over there, when all the media goes out, can you put them through the metal detector? Especially Rob over there from the start. He's a champion. It's a real pleasure to be here today alongside Minister Pirie that you just heard from, and also Minister Greg Rickford, Minister Stephen Crawford, and Will Boma, the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Indigenous Affairs and First Nations Economic Reconciliation, and my Parliamentary Assistant for Intergovernmental Affairs. I also want to acknowledge and welcome Priya from the Ontario Mining Association, as well as representatives from some of our province's great mining companies. And a big thank you to Alexis, Kim, and the incredible team at Royal Ontario Museum for hosting us today. The ROM has such a great critical minerals exhibit. And folks, this is just one part of it. Behind there is just rows and rows of critical minerals. It's really impressive. If you ever have a chance to bring your family down or yourselves, come by, and it's shocking what you see here. Highlighting Ontario's rich mining history and puts our abundant supply of critical minerals on full display. I encourage everyone to check it out if you can. Friends, we're just 1 week away, 7 days, from a new administration in the White House and the real threat of a 25% tariff on Canadian goods entering the United States. This is not something we're taking lightly. Last week, I met with all premiers, and on Wednesday, I'll be in Ottawa to meet with the Prime Minister and all the premiers as well, to continue pressing the federal government to do everything humanly possible to avoid U.S. tariffs. The political instability in Ottawa is no excuse. The federal government needs to present a more credible plan to invest in more in Canada's military, to exceed our 2% NATO commitment, and the federal government needs to turn words into action with highly visible activities every day that show Canada is serious about strengthening our border security. As we prepare for the incoming administration, Ontario is doing our part. Over the past several months, I've been meeting with U.S. senators, congressmen and congresswomen, governors, and business leaders to promote Ontario's close economic partnership with the United States and to underscore the devastating impact that tariffs would have on families and workers in both countries. Just keep in mind, there's over 9 million Americans that wake up every morning to produce products for Ontario alone, including the million Americans that wake up every morning to produce products for all the other provinces and territories, whose jobs rely on making goods sold to Ontario and Canada. As I've met with and spoken with U.S. lawmakers, I've heard significant concerns about how China is ripping off American workers by hijacking global supply chains. I've heard loud and clear, America has had enough. Now, U.S. lawmakers are undertaking one of the most ambitious economic and geopolitical shifts in decades as America decouples from China and its global proxies. This won't be easy. It will require long-term thinking, and it will require dedication. But most of all, it will require friends and allies. Canada's here to help. Working together, Canada and the U.S. can be the richest, most successful, the safest countries on the entire planet. Working together, we can usher in a new American-Canadian century, a time of unprecedented growth, job creation, security, and prosperity. We do so by building Fortress AMCAN. Fortress AMCAN is a renewed alliance between America and Canada. It's a beacon of stability, security, and long-term economic growth on both sides of the border. A true partnership where Canada and the U.S. align on shared priorities. Achieving free, fair, and balanced trade, growing our economies and protecting our borders and our communities. Last week at our Darlington nuclear facility, I talked about how Fortress AMCAN can achieve energy security to power economic growth on both sides of the border. Like energy and electricity, Ontario and Canada's abundant supply of critical minerals, essential for the advanced military technologies that will define geopolitical and economic security for the next century, are a key strategic advantage. As a key example, take our supply of nickel. Canada is by far America's #1 supplier of nickel. 46% of the nickel the U.S. uses comes from Canada. Norway is a distant second at 9%. Canada's nickel is some of the highest quality in the entire world, suitable for the most advanced military technologies. America needs it, Canada has it. Like our supply of nickel, Ontario and Canada are home to some of the richest mineral deposits in the entire world, including the Ring of Fire region. At a time when China is winning the race to dominate these resources, while also restricting the sale and shipment of critical minerals to the U.S., Canada and Ontario need to urgently get our critical minerals out of the ground, processed and shipped to the factory floors that are building for the future. Here in Ontario, work is already underway to position our province as a global leader in critical minerals. We're working with First Nation communities, investing in skills training programs for the mining industry, speeding up the process to open a mine in Ontario, investing millions of dollars to support mineral exploration and development, and making progress building the all-season roads to the Ring of Fire. But we have more work to do. To build Fortress AMCAN, I'm proposing bold new measures to help extract, process, and deliver the critical minerals that will meet the demands of our AMCAN economies. Ontario plans to start a new AMCAN Critical Mineral Security Alliance to invest in and build out American and Canadian critical mineral supply chains, including by significantly expanding AMCAN processing capacity. As part of this new alliance, we need to speed up regulatory approval timelines for current and planned critical mineral projects, with priority given to the projects that displace and replace Chinese supply, including by enshrining a one project, one process permitting approach to all resource development in Canada, with the service standards and timelines guaranteeing for regulatory approvals while promoting First Nation equity and economic participation and respecting and meeting our duty to consult obligations. I'm also urging the federal government to work with Ontario and other willing provinces and territories to designate areas where multiple critical minerals are present or likely to be present, including the Ring of Fire region, as regions of strategic importance to the national security of Canada and the U.S. These regions should be supported with a special approvals process that significantly reduces timelines to get minerals out of the ground. I'm also calling on the federal government to ensure that federal foreign investment reviews capture emerging strategic sectors and supply chains like critical minerals and energy, with the stated objective of protecting these sectors for Fortress AMCAN. At the same time, Canada and Ontario should continue to work with the U.S. Department of Defense to prioritize shared AMCAN national security objectives as we invest in critical mineral supply chains. Lastly, I'm urging the federal government, U.S. lawmakers, and industry experts to join us in a new cross-border working group to identify AMCAN policy solutions that promote the long-term sustainability of critical mineral development projects, including by cracking down short selling on foreign investment tactics that undermine the viability of American and Canadian junior mining companies. U.S. lawmakers are already looking at options. We should urgently join them in this work. With these measures, we can power our economic growth, create jobs, and advance our shared security priorities. Friends, Fortress AMCAN is an ambitious plan. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But we owe it to our workers in Ontario, across Canada, and the U.S. to act now. Many of these initiatives will require the federal government to step up to ensure that energy, trade, and security policies serve the best interest of Canadians and Americans alike. Together, let's stop wasting time talking about a merger that is never going to happen, and instead focus on our efforts on restoring the pride of Made in Canada and Made in the USA. Let's be unapologetic as we stand up for Canadian and American workers against the world. Together, let's usher in the new American and Canadian century. Let's build Fortress AMCAN. Thank you for everyone for joining us today, and may God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you.
We will now open the floor for questions from the media. Please come to the mic and state your name and outlet. Just a reminder, it's one question and one follow-up. First question.
Thank you.
Try and make an adjustment here with the microphone. Yeah. Thank you, Grace. Premier Mark McAllister from City News. As you know, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith made a trip to Florida over the course of the weekend. She had a chance to speak with President-elect Trump, yes, mainly about Alberta's energy exports. Mm-hmm. She seems to have taken the lead in representing Canada at the same time. How does that impact your efforts?
Well, not at all. You know, it just goes to show you all the premiers are working hard. They're all reaching out to their counterparts down there. And I'm glad that Premier Smith went down there and had a couple-minute chat with them. That was important as well. But, you know, this just goes to show us, you know, we have the tools in our toolbox, no matter, and I'm speaking for Ontario, not for the rest of the country, when it comes to energy reliance, no matter if it's electricity or our critical minerals that we have here. And that's a tool that we want to send more energy, more critical minerals, more silver down to the U.S. to support our greatest ally and friend.
Premier Smith said this morning, based on that conversation, that she more or less expects that these tariffs are actually going to come into place. Does that mean your plans with Fortress AMCAN are going to end up failing?
Not at all. That's a proposal that Ontario has come up with, and I think it's an incredible proposal. I've bounced it off many elected officials down in the U.S. They're quite excited about it. They're quite excited about having a strong economic tie with Canada, which have had for decades, and especially with the geopolitical situation happening around the world, and China's cutting, you know, America off on the critical minerals. They're trying to corner the market. Who has more critical minerals than anyone right now in North America? It's Ontario, and we're willing to share that with our friends and allies.
Hi, Premier Alison Jones with the Canadian Press.
Hi, Alison.
Further to Premier Smith's meeting with the President-elect, just wondering if you've made any headway on your efforts to meet with him?
No, I haven't. I've been reaching out to, again, the governors and senators and congresspeople. But I can tell you one thing, he is well aware of Ontario.
What makes you say that? What indications have you had that he's
'Cause I've
paying
heard it.
attention to Ontario's push?
I've heard it from a tremendous amount of people, elected officials, CEOs, other people. I've heard it firsthand, so it's a good thing.
Richard Southern, 680 News Radio.
Hi, Richard.
Hi, Premier. Both Marit Stiles and Bonnie Crombie were out this morning saying Doug Ford doesn't need to seek a new mandate right now because, well, he has a big majority already, but also because we stand ready to work with him on stimulus. Neither ruled out the possibility of voting with you on a stimulus bill. So my question is, if you can seek cross-party support, does that negate the reason for an early election right now?
Well, let's look at it this way. Nothing's been decided. Let's see where the tariffs go. But what Marit Stiles and Bonnie Crombie, they obviously, not worried about spending tens of billions of dollars and getting approval from the people, getting a mandate from the people. I believe if you're going to go out there, we're going to be hit the hardest, bar none, over any jurisdiction in the country. They're targeting Ontario. They're targeting good-paying jobs in Ontario. And I'm going to fight with every tool I have in our toolbox to protect Ontario jobs, to protect Canadian jobs. And they may think it's okay just to go ahead and throw off our fiscal plan moving forward. I don't think that. I think if it comes to it, and we have to spend tens of billions of dollars, we go to the people. Let the people decide. It's their money. It's not the government's. That's where we differ.
So it sounds as if Trump does put in place the tariffs, you're going to the polls. Is that fair to say, Premier?
Well, let's take a look at what happens on January 20th or 21st, and all depends on what sort of tariffs he's putting in there. But I know one thing, his number one target, the bullseye, is on the backs of hardworking Ontario workers, and I will do everything I can in my power to protect the workers of Ontario and also Canadians across the board.
Hi, Premier. Jeff Gray, Globe and Mail. Picking up on that, you said yourself you believe the tariffs are coming.
I believe
You're
so.
meeting with the Prime Minister and the other premiers, of course, this week. But can you give us a sense, what do you think needs to be done, given that we're 7 days away from that? Retaliatory tariffs on certain products? You talked about cutting off the electricity. Where are you now on what actually is going to happen in a week?
Well, when I go to Ottawa and I sit down and speak to the Prime Minister on Wednesday, keep in mind, folks, this is their jurisdiction. They need to come up with a strong plan. They need to be doing everything every single day to make sure we avoid these tariffs. They need to be showing the people of Canada that they're doing something on the border. And to be very frank, their new minister, I haven't seen hide nor hair of them. They said they're putting a $1.3 billion fund together for our border. What's the plan? What's the plan for the tariffs when they come? We need to make sure that as long as they're in office, as long as the Prime Minister, he has to go full steam ahead. And so does his border security person. I think Minister McGuinty, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's David McGuinty. Where is he? You got to get out there. You got to show the people a plan. You got to tell them what they're doing. It's not the province's responsibility, even though we have a strong plan. We have a strong plan to protect our borders against drugs coming in and going out. We have a strong plan to make sure we don't have illegals coming in and out. And we have a strong plan for protecting Ontario and Canada from the illegal guns that are crossing the border. So we need to find out what the feds are doing.
So following up on that then, cutting off electricity, cutting off oil, Premier Smith does not like these ideas. You've expressed support for the first one in the past. Are you ruling that out now, that we're not going to shut off the lights?
Well, let me be very clear. I'm speaking for Ontario. I'm not speaking for Alberta. I'm not speaking for Premier Smith. But we have to use all the tools possible when our country's under attack economically, when our province is under attack economically. You just don't roll over. Maybe I come from a different school. I believe in negotiating through strength, not weakness. And when you look at the things that the U.S. needs, the U.S. needs aluminum from Quebec, or it devastates their manufacturing. They're in desperate need of our high-grade nickel from Ontario. They need the energy from Ontario, the electricity, and they need the potash from Saskatchewan that gets shipped down to all the farmers in the U.S. They need the uranium that comes from Saskatchewan that gets processed here in Port Hope. That's what they need. And all I believe in is the AMCAN fortresses. Let's ship them more. Let's give them more of our silver, more of our energy. That's what I believe.
Hey, Premier. Hi, Barbara with iPolitics. I'm just curious about, so you say not all the premiers are on the same page about retaliatory tariffs, and you're having this meeting this Wednesday to talk about that a little bit more. Are you confident on their level of preparedness to deal with the tariffs, the threat of the tariffs so far, if you guys are still not on the same page?
Well, good question. Let's see if the feds have a strong plan. I know we have a list that we're going to be running through with the federal government to add to their list, but let's see what they have to say. I have not seen the exact list. There's a lot of rumors going around, but when we get there Wednesday, we'll expect a list, and we need them to be 100% ready. And we'll be there making sure that we protect jobs here in Ontario and also in Canada.
What is your, do you think that Canada would be like prepared for, let's say, a real economic war with the States if it comes to that?
Let's try to avoid that. All it's going to do is hurt Canadians. It's going to hurt Americans. It's going to hurt America big time. It's going to hurt us big time as well, and especially here in Ontario. So we might have to do things that are unprecedented to make sure we make sure that we support people working, the hard-working blue-collar people in our province, that they know the government has their back.
Hi, Premier. Lorenda Redekop with CBC News. Hi. Back to Premier Danielle Smith and talking about these energy export restrictions. She says that there would be a national unity crisis if Ottawa does consider these. What do you think of that? Should you be ruling this out?
Well, I can't speak for Premier Smith. I'll be chatting on Wednesday. I think she's away right now, so she'll be going online, and we'll be speaking with all the premiers. And let's see what the federal government has, see what they're proposing, and then we'll take it from there.
On the critical minerals, isn't this something that's still years away?
No, and I'm going to pass it over to Minister Pirie, and he can pass it over to Minister Rickford, but I don't believe so. We have to speed things up, and even if it's a year or 2 or 3 years down the road, that's something that we need. You know, it's unlike, and they know it better than I do, but it's unlike anywhere in the world that you take 10, 15 years to get a permit. Well, guess what? There's other countries that are saying, hey, we'll get it immediately. So where are the investors? Where are the mining experts going? They're going to a place that they can get the minerals out of the ground and get it into the market. But go ahead, George. Over to Greg.
Well, quite frankly, Ontario has everything that the U.S. wants. When we talk about the nickel from Sudbury, we know exactly what happens with that, where it's needed, the aerospace industry and the national defense industry. You're quite right. China controls right now 80% of the rare earths and critical minerals. And what are we doing? We're catching up. That's why we passed the Building More Mines Act almost immediately when I became in power. We've passed the regulations to streamline the permitting. That's why we're setting on this right now. That's our goal. We just discovered cesium 20 miles west of Lake Abitibi, right in infrastructure, looking for lithium, and found cesium. Cesium isn't produced anywhere globally, and it's only held by the Chinese. We have it right here, 20 miles west of Lake Abitibi. We don't need the nickel from Indonesia. We've got the nickel, all the nickel in the world, right here in Northern Ontario, in the Timmins area, in the Ring of Fire. We have the titanium as well in the Ring of Fire. Absolutely essential for national security. You've heard what the Premier said about speeding the process up. And that's what this plan is all about, speeding it up so that these minerals get out of the ground quicker, so we feed the supply chains that, in fact, in critical minerals and rare earths, that, in fact, the U.S. wants. We have them. We have the fuel of the future tomorrow right here today in Northern Ontario. Mr. Rickford?
Well, it's hard to beat that. I just can tell you that at a macro level, look, the United States Under Secretary of Commerce had approached us a couple of years ago with a serious interest about what kinds of things we could do as a province with the United States to develop critical minerals. President Biden spoke about the critical minerals that we have. Well, I can tell you what we means, okay? We means Ontario principally. There are other critical mineral deposits across the country, but it's been Ontario over the last 6 years, really, but particularly in the first 4, that moved mining operations to extraction when they had been stuck in regulatory matters, bad partnerships with First Nations communities, no plan for economic infrastructure that would strengthen those communities, not just in terms of the ability for young people to get out of meaningful employment, but to build out infrastructure in those communities. And now, companies that are extracting critical minerals in Ontario currently are saying, let's process these here. Let's be part of this supply chain and make sense of it for what the Premier has described as Fortress AmCan. So AmCan can, because Ontario is in a better position than they have ever been. In the next couple of weeks, you'll hear even more about how we plan to build out legacy infrastructure to support our isolated and remote First Nations communities and municipalities and bring critical minerals to a market that we hope is squarely here in North America and sends a message to our competition that AmCan can.
Thank you. You know, I'm fortunate to have many great ministers, but very knowledgeable in the mining sector. Greg, you've been doing it for years, and along with Minister Pirie, he is the brightest guy when it comes to mining in the entire country. Not just Ontario, the entire country. He spent his whole life in mining. He comes up with words I don't even understand, some of these critical minerals, so I don't know what they're used for, but he's a genius, that guy.
Premier Derek DeCluet from Bloomberg News. Is it a problem for the negotiating position of Canada that Danielle Smith is taking retaliation options off the table publicly?
Well, that's Danielle Smith. She's speaking for Alberta. She's not speaking for the country. I'm speaking for Ontario. That's going to get hurt a lot more. They aren't going to go after the oil. They're coming after Ontario. Let's be very clear about this. And we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to protect Ontarian jobs. And that's, I guess, everyone has their opinion in the country.
With regard to this proposal today, which governors, congresspeople, which states have you kind of specifically targeted? And have you already spoken to them about what you have outlined here today?
Well, I can't even remember. I've talked to so many. It's 3 a day. I have 3 more lined up. I think today I saw it on my schedule, 3 more tomorrow. It's really about getting the message out to the elected officials, getting the message out to their communities and their states that rely on Canada. As I always say, Canada as a whole, we're the #1 export destination, 21 states. Ontario is the #1 destination for export for 17 states and #2 for 11 other states. And let's try to avoid these tariffs. It's going to hurt them, and it's going to hurt us. Don't get me wrong, but it's going to hurt them just as much, and we'll make sure it hurts them.
Hi there, Alan Hale from the Trillium.
Hi, Al.
I have a question about this idea of speeding up development on the Ring of Fire.
Yes.
We have heard that this fall, Atkins Realis is already flying survey teams around the area for the roads that will lead up to the Ring of Fire, but we haven't heard any real announcement about that. Can you or Minister Pirie or Minister Rickford confirm that these roads are now under construction, and can you explain how what you're announcing today will change the timelines for actually getting the site accessible and ready for nickel extraction?
Sure. I'll just say 2 minutes and I'll pass it over to Minister Pirie. Right now we have a great relationship with First Nations across the province, but a really good one with the chief from Arrowland First Nations, Chief Sonny. He's just gung-ho, ready to go. I've visited that region, I think, 3 times in the last few months. I've been up to the site, and we just have to cross the T's, dot the I's. But once we get that done, which should be very, very shortly, We were hoping to get it done before New Year's, but we'll get it done shortly. And as he said, it's his words, not mine. You can jump on the bulldozer during the day, and I'll take the night shift. So I might need a little training on the dozer, but we're going to get this going. And that's that 80-kilometer jaunt before you get up to the next area where Webequie and Martin Falls is working. So either one of you? Go ahead.
Yeah, those agreements have already been, announced in relation to getting the road built to Painter Lake. That's the first step. The survey teams that you're talking about, that's being done associated with the environmental assessment process. And to do that, you have to do the soil samples to ensure that when you pick the road site, that you're going to have the base and you're going to be able to build the roads and build the bridges. But let me be very clear about one thing. The easiest thing in this process is building the road. We built the roads. I built a road from Musselwhite to the road from Pickle Lake. You pick the site, you pick your bowl pits from the esker sites, and you build the road. That is the easiest and simplest thing to do in this whole process. 85% of that road will be built on eskers. So the borer pits for the aggregate have already been located. So that's the teams that you'll see in place. We're hoping, and Mr. Rickford, I think and Premier, I think we're not out of order to say this, but let's look for some announcements at PDAC. Okay.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the bulldozer, because we have a press release from last week from the Mattawa First Nations, who are the First Nations around the Ring of Fire. Yep. They're very upset about this yard sign in Greenstone, where these roads are going to connect to the Trans-Canada. And it's a picture of a bulldozer with the words "tread on them" underneath. The Mattawa First Nations Chiefs Council has said this is a racist sign, and that it is obviously a reference to your rhetoric about hopping on a bulldozer yourself to build these roads. And they say that rhetoric has, let me see here, quote, allowed this kind of extremist and threatening ideology to take root. Do you stand behind this hopping on a bulldozer? And I would also like to hear from Mr. Rickford to see if this comment has been helpful for First Nations relations.
I don't agree with what did they say? A sign that says "tread on" what?
Tread on them. It's like that "Don't tread on me" sign from the United States Civil War, but it's tread on them.
No, you know something. We work collaboratively with our First Nations, and by the way, that First Nations group has nothing to do with Arrowlands First Nations. I met with 4 or 5 different chiefs up there. They treat us like gold. They want prosperity. They want jobs. They want that road to go in. They want to make sure that they have energy going up there, that right now it's a fly-in community. They have to fly in the fuel. This is going to bring better health care to them. It's going to actually bring proper produce and food that's not frozen. It's going to bring fuel. They want it. We're going to support them. By no means, if someone's sitting back saying, well, we don't want it, it'd be difficult. But he is gung-ho. Feel free to reach out to Chief Sonny at Arrowland, and he'll tell you how positive he is and how positive the community is. Because this is going to bring jobs, it's going to bring money, it's going to bring investment to the hospitals and the schools and infrastructure. Do you understand, like, when I was up there, they didn't even have a Tim Hortons. It was Minister Greg Rickford that went up there with a big check for a plaza they're going to build, that people are actually going to be able to go to a Tim Hortons or go get fuel. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to support the community. Do you have any comments there, Greg?
I mean, sure. Look, as a matter of law and policy, we build things out by consensus. And majorly, we have solid relations with First Nations communities. We understand the opportunity. We've spent a lot of time in Greenstone, obviously. You want to talk about policy problems. They actually built a gas-fired plant, the mine itself, so that they would have enough electricity. That should tell us that there's not enough electricity to get to the region, let alone operate. That was a big mistake by the previous government to pass up an opportunity to build a strategic plan that would supply energy to the north. I would point out to you, Alan, and you've worked in Kenora, I know you know the North well enough, that the communities in the central part of Northern Ontario are the only ones still that will be operating as of this year on anything but diesel fuel. I suspect that you think that's a bad idea. I know the chiefs think it's a bad idea. I know the Premier thinks it's a bad idea. And in my capacity as the Northern Development guy, we're going to work and ensure that those partnerships are in place to build legacy infrastructure that can support what the communities need to be sustainable, to participate in a larger new center of gravity for resource development, and frankly, to take that farther north for those communities who need it more than ever. So that's what our plan is. We are building that kind of consensus, and I would say, after speaking with many chiefs in the region, they're generally satisfied. Are there points of contention? We'll continue to work through those, focus on them as opportunities, understand and prioritize what they would like to see happen, and so far, we've had a lot of success with that. All right.
This-
one last
Yeah,
question.
sure.
Federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has said that Canada should withhold the export of critical minerals as retaliation for any Trump tariffs. Is that something you would support, like preemptively saying we're not going to send you that nickel, that titanium?
No, let's see what they're what they're going to do on January 20th, 21st, and then we'll retaliate, and then it may have to go to the next level. And let's try not to go down that road. It's just going to delay and hurt both economies. And that's why we're continuously communicating with our American colleagues on a daily basis. And they understand. As I've said before, not one Republican, not one Democrat at all different levels, be it, again, the senators, Congress, or the, well, not the presidency, that are saying this is a good thing. They're all saying this is a terrible thing. So I don't know how he's going to get this through, but we will always have that in our toolbox. I want to ship them more critical minerals. I want to ship them more energy. But make no mistake about it. If they're coming full tilt at us, I won't hesitate to pull out every single tool we have until they can feel the pain. But that's the last thing I want to do.
Thank you. This concludes today's press conference.
Well, thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. Let's keep moving forward. We'll have more information on Tuesday and Wednesday. Thank you. God bless.